In this video, we're going to apply the GPS method to Genesis 6 from verse 5 to 8. Now, in the GPS method, we have three major steps. The first one is understanding, and the purpose of that is to get to the message to the original receiver. And if we get that message, we ask ourselves, is this message applicable? That's our second step. And if it's applicable, we realize it's a moral, and then we communicate it in the 21st century. So let us read the passage first before we apply the GPS method. Genesis 6. The Lord saw how great man's wickedness on the earth had become, and that every inclination of the thoughts of his heart was only evil at the time. The Lord was grieved that he had made man on the earth, and his heart was filled with pain. So the Lord said, I will wipe mankind, whom I have created from the face of the earth, men and animals, and creatures that move along the ground, and birds in the air, for I am grieved that I have made them. But Noah found favor in the eyes of the Lord. Now we go to our GPS method to see how we can get to the message to the original receiver and then apply it and then communicate it. So our first step is understanding. And in the process of understanding, we use the acronym of START. And the first one is S, the situation. So we ask ourselves, but what is the situation of Genesis 6? Because when you know the situation, the background, it will help you to get a better understanding of what's going on. Well, let's go to verse 5. The Lord saw how great man's wickedness on the earth had become, and that every inclination of the thoughts of his heart was only evil at the time. So this verse sets the tone for what's coming. So the Lord saw how great man's wickedness was on the earth. And if we go to the previous chapters as well, in chapter 3, we have Adam and Eve who disobeyed God. And then the first murder you get in Genesis 4, where Cain killed Abel. And then in Genesis 5, you have the genealogy of Abel, and you see things are not going too well there. So God saw how great man's wickedness was on the earth. So the situation, one can say, is the wickedness of people. And now the second one is to determine the type of literature. And the reason why that is important, because you cannot read poetry like prose, and that will help you to better analyze the passage if you know what type of literature it is. So we know that we are dealing in this passage with prose. That's the major type of literature. It's prose, and the other one is poetry. But the prose can be divided in different kinds of prose, like narrative and explanation and instructions. But here we have a narrative, and we know that narrative can be subdivided, and this is a story. Other kinds of narratives will be like conversation, parable, symbolism, but here we have a story. And now we dig into the passage. So the first two steps, the S and the T, helps us to know what we are dealing with. So we're dealing with the wickedness of people, and we are dealing with the story. Now we are digging in to the passage. And when we read stories, we realize that a story is divided in episodes. So many episodes make up one story. Now, an episode is the smallest event with the same characters, place, and location. And we see that Genesis 6 verses 5 to 8 is actually an episode. The other thing, so we're looking, number one, for episodes. So we have an episode here. And then we look for the plot structure. The plot structure. Now, the plot structure is the way in which a story develops and serves to keep the interest of the reader. So there will be tension, and then there will be a relief of tension, or how we deal with the tension, and normally there's an outcome. So let us see if we can determine the plot structure. And while we're doing that, we can also see what are the main themes. So the Lord saw how great the wickedness on the earth had become, that every inclination of the thoughts of his heart was only evil at the time. Verse 6, the Lord was grieved that he had made man on the earth, and his heart was filled with pain. This is one of the saddest verses in the Bible. God's heart was filled with pain. He was grieved because he saw the wickedness. So one can say, here we have the tension, the plot structure. And in this case, it is a problem. The element that creates tension is the problem. Now we're going to see how God is going to deal with this problem. So the Lord said, I will wipe mankind whom I created from the face of the earth, men and animals and creatures that move along the ground and birds in the air, for I am grieved that I made them. So I will wipe mankind from the face of the earth. So this is God's solution to the problem. This is how God deals with the tension, the problem here. So what he's going to do? He is going to destroy human beings. He's going to wipe them from the face of the earth. So that is how God deals with the tension. So the problem here is the wickedness. That's the tension. And now the solution and the way to deal with this tension, God said, I will destroy them. And normally a story or an episode has an outcome or a result. An outcome or a result. And in this case is, but Noah found favor in the eyes of the Lord. The word but in the Bible always means a change of direction. And what changes here? It is God changes his mind. God changes his mind. So God decided, I'm not going to destroy human beings. So we see that the plot structure is we have a problem, then we have a solution, and then we have an outcome of this problem. God changes his mind. And now we determine the message to the original receiver. So we have the plot structure. So we go back here to the process of analysis. So we determine the meaning. What's the meaning or the message to the original receiver? And one can probably say that the message to the original receiver is that the evil heart of humankind troubles the heart of God. So one can say that maybe we can write it down here. The evil heart of human beings troubles God or grieves God. And then one can also say that God changes his mind. Or one can say God's love, and I like this, God's love always supersedes his wrath, his punishment. We see that in verse 8. So God is willing to change his mind because God is driven by love and with compassion. So one can say that in the process of analysis, we see it's an episode, the plot structure, the tension, the relief of tension, and the meaning or the message to the original receiver is that God is willing to change his mind and the wickedness of people grieves him, and that God's love always supersedes his wrath. So that's the message to the original receiver. Now, we just want to double check, and we do this in step 4 and 5. So we see in step 4 and 5, we're outside the text, and also in the first 2 steps, situation and type of literature. And here in step number 3, we spend most of our time, we read the passage, get to the message to the original receiver, and now we ask the question, does it relate to the rest of the Bible? And we see that actually when you read many other pages in the Bible, like Genesis 18, from verse 16 to 23, That's the episode where Abraham asked God not to destroy Sodom and Gomorrah for 50, for 45, 40, and then he bargained with God to spare Sodom and Gomorrah for 10 people. So we could see there that God is willing also to change his mind. And then in Jonah chapter 3 verse 10, where God decided not to destroy Nineveh. So the message that Jonah needed to bring to the people of Nineveh, in 40 days God will destroy you. And then they felt bad and repented. Then God said, well, I will not do that anymore. And then in step number 5, we read Bible commentaries or study Bibles just to make sure that we are on the right track. And I promise you, when you read other study Bibles, they will get to the same finding, and it also relates to the rest of the Bible. So then one can say the message to the original receiver remains: the evil heart of human beings troubles God, God changes his mind, and God's love always supersedes his wrath. That is the message to the original receiver. Now the next step is this message to the original receiver applicable in our day? And the way we do that, we see whether it's a ceremonial, cultural, or civil law. Because these 3 laws we realize we don't apply, because these 3 things are incidentals. We don't apply. Because the ceremonial laws were fulfilled in Jesus Christ. Culturally, we live in a different situation, and civil laws differ from the civil laws of those days. So we see it's not a ceremonial law, because there's no offering system, there's no cultural things involved, and the same, there's no civil things involved. We see it is a moral, and everything that's moral is essential, therefore it's applicable in our day and time. It's moral because it has to do with relationships and the character of God. So now we can apply that message in the 21st century.